Trouble when they walked into the bar. Not physical, getting somebody's bum with trouble, but emotional. I don't want to hear this shit. Up until a few months ago, I would have considered them friends. Even when things went to hell, if they had just kept their mouths shut, they would have been fine. The ones I found knew about her affair, I dropped like a rock, making it very clear they were no longer my friends. Of course, they tried to argue. They didn't want to take sides. They hoped she'd figure out it was destructive behavior. She still loves you. Blah, blah, blah. Didn't cut it with me, and I told they so. It took a couple of meetings and some pretty intense confrontations before they realized I was serious. To this day, if one comes up and tries to talk, I either turn my back or leave. I think they finally got the point. The few others I still associated with got the point and made sure they didn't mention her. If they did, by accident, I simply excused myself and left. It had been 6 months, the paperwork filed, the statements given, my offer of a 50-50 split more than fair, and it was almost done. She was fighting it tooth and nail. We tried arbitration, but they gave up when neither of us would budge. Mostly they talked to her, trying to get her to see she was getting a really good deal. Then she hit me with counseling. I refused, telling the judge it would be a complete waste of everyone's time and money, because there was no way I'd reconcile. The judge, listening to an emotional, borderline hysterical Becky, threatened me with jail, and was shocked when I said, "All right, just tell me when to turn myself in. You're that positive this marriage can't be saved?" Beyond the shadow of a doubt, to use a term you'll easily understand. I will not, let me stress that, will not ever be living with or have a relationship with her for the rest of my life. We have no children. Since this started, we have very few friends in common. My business partner and his wife helped her carry on and conceal the affair, so I'm through with them. Divorcing her will be just a tiny ripple in the big pond of life. Clear enough for you. I may have overstated it, and she decided to test my resolve. I spent 3 weekends in jail before she finally understood I was willing to keep going indefinitely and dropped counseling. They were on a mission. You could see it in the eyes of the women. The men just looked uncomfortable. I knew they weren't there by accident. The bar was in another town 25 miles away. I told my new favorite bartender I didn't care for the quality of people in my old one. She was pretty shrewd, in her mid-40s, and had pretty much seen it all. She managed to get the story out of me in bits and pieces, usually waiting until I'd had at least 4 beers. She had been married to the same man for 21 years. They owned the bar. What I loved most about her was she never offered an opinion, even though I could see she wanted to. Finally, one night, I told her to speak her mind, a one-time, never to be broached again opportunity, so she'd get over wondering about it. When we were done, she just looked at me for a little while. "Obviously, I've only heard your side of the story. It might be fantasy and bullshit, but I don't think so. You were probably right to leave, but you might want to let her give you a mother figure who'd feed you all the alcohol you wanted, for a price, if you gave her your keys first." She knew something was up the minute they walked in, and she saw my face turn to stone. "Friends," she said, nodding to them. "I don't know," I answered truthfully. "Guess I'm about to find out." "Don't do anything stupid," she warned. "Just give me a look and I'll run them out of here." It took them 10 minutes to work up the nerve to say anything. Todd walked up and stood beside me. "Hey Jace, how you doing?" "I'm fine. The family's fine. Everybody is fine." "Cut to the chase, Todd. What do you want?" My little speech, delivered with no emotion, shook him a little. "Me and the boys," he nodded at his 2 friends. "We don't really want to do this. But Becky has them all bummed out crying over what an a-hole you're being over something she's sorry about and you won't forgive her for. You remember being married? Hell, technically you're still married, and they won't let it go. So we found out where you were, and here we are. Will you talk to them? If I say no, tell them to cram Becky up their collective asses and leave me the hell alone." He colored a little, but kept on. "It would probably hurt all their feelings, and they'd come after you anyway. Please, Jace." I let him stew for a minute. "All right. But remember what I told Jeff and Angela? Bob and Gloria? It still applies. I do this, we're through. Don't bother looking me up again, understand?" I think he got a little angry, like I gave a shit. "I understand. Man, what a hard bum you've turned into. Now will you talk to them?" "Yes. Let me ask you something before you go. If it was your wife screwing around, would you let it go?" He gave me a smirk. "That'll never happen. She loves me." "Yeah." Becky said the same thing. "Still does. Didn't stop her now, did it?" He frowned before I continued. "First, go tell Sandy and George what I said, and then have them come over here and tell me they understand. They might not be as box-whipped as you are. Then, tell the girls I'll give them 10 minutes, no more, so they better be sure about what they say right off the bat, because they'll never get a second chance. I figure I'll have time to enjoy another beer by then." I turned away, dismissing him. He stood for a second, head hanging, before he went back to the table. I watched in the mirror as their heads jerked up and a heated discussion started. Sandy threw up his hands and walked over to me. "I've always liked you, Jace. You don't deserve this shit. I'm a little ashamed of the whole thing, and I'm out. I apologize for bothering you. But Tina is determined. We're going to have a long talk on the way home. This is the last time I'm going to put up with her meddling. I guess this is goodbye." He held out his hand. I shook it. "So long, Sandy. You're one of the good ones. If I ever come back to town, I might look you up. Not Tina, though. George never really liked me much, so we had no problem." The women watched me like a hawk. I made them wait a little while before mentally girding my loins and walking into the lion's den. I sat, and they started talking. I held up my hand, got out my phone, and set the timer for 10 minutes. I could tell it really pissed them off. "All right, you're on the clock. Go." Tina rolled her eyes. "Really, Jace, a timer?" 9 minutes and 49 seconds, I said. They talked over each other for a minute before they realized their mistake and looked at Carrie. Apparently, she was to be the spokesperson. I know this is really none of our business, but they almost ran when I slammed my hand down hard on the table. Finally, somebody understands. "You're right, it's none of your business, and you'd be well served to stay out of it. But you can't resist, can you? You're determined to talk sense into me, because you're our friends, right? Then where the hell were you when she was out screwing someone else? Where was your concern for me then? One word from any of you to either of us would have saved me a lot of grief. We wouldn't even be here now. But looking back, I can't recall you or any of our so-called friends ratting her out. Hell, a lot of you gave her alibis." End of rant. Let me reset the timer. They all sat there stunned before Carrie spoke up. She sounded annoyed. "Jace, please. It was a mistake. She never meant for it to happen. We didn't know what to say. She's miserable. Her parents hardly ever talk to her anymore. Her boss has her on probation. She cried when she found out you'd saved her job. I think she's learned her lesson. Time to swallow your stubborn pride and take her back." I rolled my eyes. "Time? I'm sorry. I didn't read the 304 wife cheating handbook. I wasn't aware there was a time limit on how long I was allowed to be angry. So now it's okay, fine? Kiss kiss, promise promise, and we live happily ever after? Not hardly. You know, I'd be a lot calmer if you people wouldn't keep shoving her in my face. Still think you know best for us? They actually looked a little guilty before nodding yes. You all feel that way? I looked around the table and they all nodded their heads again. They babbled for a few more seconds before I stopped them. Hold on. Let's go off the clock for a second here. Carrie, if you found out George was screwing around on you and all of us knew and didn't tell you, that it would be all right? Or, if the spouse was found out that they'd eventually be forgiven? You love him that much? She frowned but said she would eventually. And if the person he was fooling with was someone you knew, a friend even, married to a friend, could you forgive them also? She looked definitely uncomfortable. They all suddenly seemed very nervous. I'd like to think I would, after a time, if I thought they were really sorry. I grinned. Well, that's great, because Jan and George have been screwing like monkeys for about 8 months now. In fact, when I heard the rumors about you guys, I didn't believe it. And before you ask, I was going to tell you what I'd heard, but other things came up that required my attention. I left it alone because I thought you deserved to find out on your own, like I did. By then I didn't give a shit about any of you anyway. It's why I moved here. I heard they had a better class of a-holes. So take your pompous, hypocritical platitudes and shove them up your collective asses. I stopped, breathing heavily. There was dead silence around the table. So, let the healing begin. That way we can all get over it. Carrie, tell Jan you forgive her. Jan, in 4 months you can promise her you won't screw him again and everything will be fine. You'll have a stronger marriage for it. I'm pretty sure that's in a chapter of the cheating handbook somewhere. I stopped to catch my breath. Let's get Todd and George over here too, and do a blanket healing. And Carrie, don't throw too many stones, or I'll have to tell an interesting tale about you and a stripper during you last girls' weekend to Myrtle Beach. Did I mention Becky told tales when she was drunk and we were alone? Tina, you and Sandy need a new circle of friends. Looks like the old one is pretty worn out. We finished our conversation about me and Becky, but it looks like you guys have a lot to talk about, so I'll be leaving now. Let's not do this again, ever. Bye. Was it a shitty thing to do? Maybe, but it didn't bother me much. He without sin, and so on. There was a hell of a row at the table. A lot of yelling and tears, and more than a few slaps. Sandy grabbed Tina and they went to another table. He wasn't loud, but he had a finger in her face and she was crying pretty hard. Finally Marge, the bartender, told them to either leave or tone it down. They trooped out, all but Tina and Sandy. She timidly came up to me. I'm sorry, she said, with lowered head and avoided eye contact. Then she gathered her courage and looked up. It's just that we thought you were the best of us. You guys seemed really happy. I didn't believe it when you split up, and I figured once you calmed down you'd talk it out and get back together. I'm guessing everyone, especially Becky, didn't expect your reaction. You're really through with her, aren't you? Yes, Tina, I am. You're wrong though. You and Sandy are the best of us. Use this as a learning experience. Choose your friends a little more carefully in the future. Go home now. Love each other. And if nothing else, remember me and Becky, and how you can never be sure of anything, especially how a person will react to cheating. Maybe I'll see you sometime. Sandy apologized again, and they left, holding hands. Marge nodded towards them as they left. They seem a decent couple. The others though, I'm not so sure of. I think the divorce court in your hometown will be a little busier soon. I nodded, agreeing, then gave her my keys, $30 for the cab, and switched to whiskey. I was as surprised as any of them at my reaction. I like to think I was a pretty decent guy. Still do. Then again, you never know how someone will react to stress and cheating. The fact that I loved her so deeply made the cheating even worse. I wasn't really attracted to Becky at first. She flirted too much and seemed a little flighty to me. We didn't date for the first 2 years I knew her. She was the best friend of my business partner's wife. Cindy was the one constantly trying to put us together. Give it a rest, Cindy. We're just not attracted to each other. Speak for yourself. I know for a fact she's interested in you. You'd be good for her. Being half buzzed, I smiled and kissed her cheek. But, dear Cindy, would she be good for me? She left it along for about 6 months. Then Alan, my partner, asked me for a favor. Jace, I hate to spring it on you this late, but all of us, Cindy, Becky, and her date were going to the theater tomorrow. The touring company of Mamma Mia. I know how much you love musicals, you closet sissy, and Beck and her boyfriend had a big fight and they broke up. Would you go with us and keep her company? I thought about it for a minute. Don't think so. I don't think I'd enjoy it in the company of a weepy or angry woman. And you're the one who picked the show. It's all you've talked about for 2 weeks. Have you picked which dress you're going to wear? It's after Labor Day, so the white 4-inch heels are out. Go with the black 5-inch, come screw me pumps. Maybe Cindy will get excited enough to use that 10-inch strap-in, you size queen. We laughed and went back to work. That evening, Cindy called. Please, Jace. She's a mess right now. She could use the company of a decent man, but I don't need the company of an emotional woman. She'll behave. I promise. Please, please, please. I sighed. All right, but just because I want to see the show. In gratitude, tell Alan you'll use the strap-in if he's a good girl. He'll understand. You a-hole. Now I have to buy some scented lube on the way home. Cherry, if they have it. We laughed for a minute while I tried to get a mental picture. Alan was 6'4", with a beard. Cindy might be 5'3". Seriously, dude. Thanks. If tonight sucks, I'm gonna take a turn on you with that strap-in. Now, let's get to work. We went to dinner first. Becky was subdued but not whiny. I really looked at her for the first time. She was 5'7", slender, but she had a world-class curves. Her auburn hair went to her shoulders in soft curls. Her face was well-proportioned, with brown eyes that sparkled most of the time, and a mouth that seemed to say, kiss me. Now, altogether she was a very nice package. The problem was she knew it and used it. I'd seen her work a guy, and the poor guy never had a chance when she turned on the charm. Then she'd laugh and walk off, leaving him hanging. We enjoyed the show. The girls were actually singing their favorite song from the show in the parking lot. I looked at Al and grinned. We jumped right in. Soon half the parking lot chimed in for the big finish. We went for a drink later, at a small club I suggested. I have nothing against dance clubs, but I'm sure you'll be very happy. And I'm not criticizing you, just making an observation based on watching you for the last few years. She actually smiled. Thanks, I think. You really think I'm a nice woman? My turn to smile. When you want to be. Either way, you've got the best bum I've ever seen. Ever noticed when we're around each other I'm always a step or two behind you? She flushed, then punched me on the arm. Again, thanks, I think. The song ended and we walked back, talking and smiling. Cindy was sitting there amazed. What were you two talking about? How Jay says I'm a good woman most of the time. And what a great bum I have. Alan choked on his drink and Cindy laughed. I looked at him. What? Don't tell me you've never noticed. Cindy looked at him suspiciously. What about my bum, honey? He was trying to think of something diplomatic to say when I rescued him. You do have a nice bum, Cindy, but it's not even close to hers. If it's any consolation, you've got a killer rack. Both women were looking at me like I was crazy for talking to them like this. Alan started laughing. Stop, Jace. Quit while you're breaking even. Honey, you do have a nice bum, and you've got Becky beat all to hell in the department. But it's you I love, and that's all that counts to me. Nice save, Alan, I thought, remembering now what a good salesman he was. I got a really good kiss, and she made me promise to call her, soon. I didn't call for 2 weeks. That Saturday, I got a pretty sharp call from Cindy. You a-hole, she called me that a lot. I hoped it was a term of endearment. She was starting to think there were good guys in the world, and then you don't call. Her feelings are hurt pretty bad. Cindy, I said calmly, when she finally wound down. What's Alan been doing for the last 2 weeks? You know damn well what he's been doing. You've been keeping him at the office all those ungodly hours getting the Jameson account done. Exactly, I said softly, and what was I doing all this time? Guilting Alan because you're practically living at the office. What's that? Oh, yeah, oh. Suddenly she was apologizing. I'm sorry, Jace. I didn't think. I should have told her. Well, call and tell her now. Tell if she's interested. I'll call next Thursday. I will. I wasn't thinking. I thought later many times about my next statement, and how true it turned out to be. Relax, Cindy. She's your friend. Of course you want to protect her, help her be happy. I understand. Gotta go. She was still talking and I almost burned the steaks because we couldn't keep our eyes off the girls. They finally laughed and put slinky covers on. We ate, we played in the water, got into a volleyball game, us against 4 guys. Every time they got ahead in points, Becky would bend over to pick up the ball, or Cindy would jump up and down. We won, despite not being very good. Just before it got dark, they dragged us into the water, snuggling into us. We were kissing, when she pulled back and dove under. She popped back up, grinning. Cindy did the same. Sorry, she said. We were getting too hot. I looked around at Cindy and Alan. She was completely naked. Her jugs would pop out of the water once in a while as she bounced. I couldn't see her hands either. Honey, will you get my cover? Aren't you going to put your... She put her fingers to my lips. No, I intend to stain your upholstery on the way back. Want to complain? Not in the least. Looks like I need to get Cindy's cover too. That's her top, isn't it? I'll pass the safety line. Cindy squeaked when she saw it. Becky teased her, telling her she had to come get her cover, while Alan just grinned. Finally, she tossed it to her. Hers was a lot lighter than Becky's, and it was like wet t-shirt night watching her come out of the water. I heard a gasp and looked around. 3 teen boys, carrying their gear out, were standing there like deer caught in headlights. Cindy grinned, stretched, forcing her dugs out, asking Alan for a towel. Not to be outdone, Becky bent over, showing the bottom of her bum cheeks as she picked one up and gave it to her. Good night, boys. Maybe we'll see you next week, they said, as they walked to the car. We followed along, admiring the view and laughing. That night will be etched in my memory for the rest of my life. Even now, as hurt and heartbroken as I am, I still get hard thinking about it. We damn near broke the bed. Seems she's multi-orgasmic and goes absolutely crazy. She could torment you for hours if she wanted to. By the time she was done, you wanted to come so bad it actually hurt. In spite of everything else, I never had complaints about the sex before I found out I was sharing. We were constantly together. They'd meet us for lunch once or twice a week. One would bring it, while the other went out. We discovered the conference table was really sturdy, the couch not so much. We had to replace it after Alan and Cindy had lunch in one day. We were heading towards moving in when we hit a bump in the road. I always felt it was a warning I should have heeded. We got the other account we wanted so badly. It meant enormous hours until we could afford to hire someone. I usually worked more hours than Alan, so we could spend time with Cindy. Becky and I hadn't been out in 3 weeks. She was a beautiful woman and used to getting a lot of attention, and it didn't sit well. She was witchy the last 2 phone calls, despite my apologies. I looked up one Saturday at 5. I thought I was going to call her, spend some quality time. She wasn't home. I called Cindy, and she said she thought she was out with her friends from work, after witching me out for not paying more attention to her. I wasn't in the mood. All right, if that's the way you feel. Tell Alan starting next week he works every hour I do. Sound good? She was trying to backpedal when I hung up. 40 minutes later, Becky called. Where are you? She asked. I couldn't get hold of you, so I went back to work. Enjoy your night out. I'll call you tomorrow. She was still trying to talk when I hung up. Cindy had killed my mood, and I wanted to be alone. I had started back to work when I decided to eat something. There was a little mom and pop operation down the street from the office that had killer hot dogs, so I stopped and ate 2 piled so high with toppings they were dripping everywhere, with a large order of handmade onion rings. After all, I wouldn't be kissing anyone tonight, would I? Still grabbed a couple of breath mints on the way out. I started home when I remembered a club Cindy was telling me about. It was sort of like the one we liked except it leaned towards jazz. She had read about it in the entertainment section and thought it might be a change of pace. Made my day. This had been where she had gone with her girlfriends. Sneaky little devil was doing what I was, checking it out. I started into the lounge area when she walked into view arm in arm with some guy I'd never seen, heading towards the dance floor. It didn't concern me. We were both often asked to dance by others. We did, but not often. I looked around the floor and didn't see any single girls. Huh? I decided to hang back, see what was going on. I took a small table off to the side and watched. There was no one else at the table. They danced 3 more times, the last with his hand firmly on her bum. The kiss at the end and the one at the table sealed it. I hadn't asked her to be exclusive, but I expected her to be more upfront if she was dating others. I can't deny it hurt. It did, a lot. I wrote it off as a life lesson and started to leave before I remembered the remark about being out with the girls. I got the waitress, had her take them a round of drinks in exactly 5 minutes, giving her a $20 tip. She had the radar of a good cocktail waitress or bartender. There's not going to be any trouble, is there? I assured her, saying I was leaving. They were friends of mine, and I felt foolish not noticing before. The drink was an apology because I had to leave and hadn't talked to them. She bought it, kind of. I waited a minute and dialed her number. The band was on break, and I heard it ring from where she was sitting. She looked at it, said something to her companion, and took it. Hi, honey. Change your mind. She sounded so sincere. And oh, I'm beat. It's bed for me. Say hi to the girls for me. Where are you? It sounds awfully quiet. The band's on break, and the girls had to go potty. I'm guarding the drinks. The waitress was approaching with their drinks. They looked over at me, and I stepped out of the shadows. The fedora is nice, isn't it? Tell your girlfriend here not to go into the ladies' room dressed like that. They may not understand. Her mouth opened and closed a couple of times before she could recover. I was already out the door. I sat in the darkened lot across the street and watched as she ran out the door, looking around wildly. Her date came out and said something, but she shook him off. The phone started ringing and I cut it off. I didn't feel like talking. Her date argued some more and she kept shaking her head no. He finally gave up in disgust and went back inside. I wonder what she was waiting for? 15 minutes Cindy roared up in her SUV. She climbed in and started towards my apartment. I went the other way. Not in the mood for a bunch of drama. I found a motel, paid cash, and knocked out for 10 straight hours. There was no one in my parking lot when I got home, so I showered, changed, and headed back out. I went by the office, but Alan and Cindy were there. I figured Becky was lurking somewhere, so I drove by, went 4 hours away to the mountains, called and left a message at their house since I knew where they were, and told them I needed a break and would be back Tuesday. I slept. I walked around in the sunshine enjoying it immensely. I ate when I wanted, what I wanted. Even stopped at a tourist trap and bought them all some gifts. He had been back 20 minutes before me. Cindy was there 20 minutes later. She drew in a big breath, and I held up my hand. I'll talk first, if you don't mind. Becky doesn't owe me a thing except honestly. We hadn't talked about being exclusive. I would have hated it but understood if she told me she wanted to see others. But she didn't. And then she lied about who she was with and where she was. That tells me a lot. She started to talk and I held my hand up again. Not done yet. Tell her not to bother me. I'll call her sometime this week. One more thing. Did you know she was on a date? And then lied to me about it? If I think you did, it would affect our friendship greatly. If I can't trust you, you're not my friend. Understand? She paled a little and Alan looked uncomfortable. Then she lied. I didn't know, or I would have stopped her. I'm mad at her too, Jace. I thought she was finally growing up. I'm as disappointed as you are. I chewed her a new bum over it. When? I asked. What do you mean when? When did you chew her a new bum? That night. She called me from the club, a crying mess. We spent half the night looking and waiting for you. We finally went to my house and crashed for a few hours. You had come and gone while we were asleep. Can I at least call her and tell her you're back and we'll talk to her? I sighed, mentally. Maybe she was telling me the truth after all. Yes, by all means call her. Now, if you want to keep that house and that tank you drive, you need to let us go back to work. At 6 on the dot, I told Alan I was leaving for the day. You're kidding, right? There's lots to do yet. And it'll all be here tomorrow when we come back. No more killing myself, at least for a while. I left him with his mouth hanging open. The next day, I placed an ad for an associate. Alan was pissed because it ate into the profits. Fine, I said. I'll pull the ad. But if we do, from now on we're hourly. The salary goes out the window. He didn't like that because he knew I easily worked at least a third more than he did. I called Becky like I promised. She didn't know what to say. I waited. I'm sorry, finally came out. For what? I wasn't going to make it easier. For lying to you. For going out behind your back. I was climbing the walls and just wanted to get out. I wasn't going to sleep with him. I just needed a companion. I shocked her. I understand. And you hadn't made me any promises. But I expected honesty, and you lied like crazy. Tell me how I could trust you enough now to return to where we were? Or go forward? You know I was wanting more. I thought you did too. Oh well, a leopard spots and all that. That offhand comment actually sent her into a rage. Damn you. You always had it in the back of your head I couldn't measure up, didn't you? I bet you threw your arm out of socket and put a callus on your tongue patting yourself on the back and saying, I told you so. I was falling in love, a-hole, for the first time in my life. I was scared and lonely. Feelings I never had to handle. I screwed up. I'm sorry. I said it gently, just above a whisper. I'm sorry too. And I was already in love with you. I hung up to her voice pleading with me to stay on the line. I didn't talk to her for 2 weeks. When I did, I didn't expect what was said. Would you like to go to a club Saturday? Maybe eat at that new Indian restaurant before. I was shocked by the anger in her voice. Decided to forgive the poor sinner. Huh? My penance over. I hung up, gently. I didn't need this. Cindy called me. What did you say to her? Asked her out. Silence. I thought maybe she'd hung up. Oh, what did she say? She didn't say yes, and that's all that matters. Good night of whispering. Jace. Hi, Becky. Jace, I'm really sorry. For everything. I'd like to start over, like new. I want you to see me as a new person, not someone that you used to know. Alan wants to grill Sunday. Will you come over? To visit or grill? She gave a little laugh. Alan would burn concrete if you put it on the grill. Both. I'd like to actually eat. Make your potato salad and it's a date. I will. Thank you, Jace. It took 5 months to get a sense of intimacy back. I dated others, which pissed her off no end. I told her up front if I couldn't go out with her and why. She bit her lips raw holding back. When we decided to get intimate, we had the big talk. If we're intimate, it's just us. No one else. Do you understand? Even if you just go out with old friends, if I find out about it from someone besides you, we're over. There won't be any rising from the ashes this time. And I don't intend to be your jailer. I won't be checking up on you. You're on your own. Screw up, and it's all you. She agreed too quickly for my taste. I want you to really think about this, Beck. I'm talking long-term commitment here. Don't give me your answer yet. I need to get tested before we do anything. I don't want to bring anything extra with me. For the first time, she understood I'd had sex with others. I could see the tears, but she fought them back. All right, honey. I haven't been with anyone since you, but I'll do it too. And I already know the answer. A week later, we exchanged clean bills of health and apartment keys. Sex with Beck was always exciting, but the welcome back sex nearly killed me. I actually fell asleep at work, twice. Alan said something to Cindy, and she told Becky to let me rest occasionally, so she could keep her house. She agreed, reluctantly. I still worked long hours, but not like before. The experience had taught me to prioritize. We had been living together for 8 months when I called her at her job. Can you get off this afternoon? I wouldn't ask, but it's really important. She agreed instantly, so I picked her up, handing her a drive-through bag. Sorry, babe. This will have to hold you until dinner. I refused to tell her what it was about. We drove to a nice neighborhood and pulled into a drive. There was a for sale sign out front and a realtor waiting. Is this your wife? She asked politely. Maybe, I said. I'll know by the end of the day. Becky looked at me like I was crazy. Well, let's have a look, shall we, dear? Really, men have no clue what's really important in a house. Don't you agree? Oh, they understand structure, brick and wood, but they don't have a feel for comfort or possibilities. She kept up her patter as she showed her the house. 3 bedrooms, nice big lot, small patio. Excuse me for just a moment while we confer, will you? She said to the realtor, before grabbing me into the living room. Look, honey, a fireplace. She wasn't going to be distracted. She backed me against the mantel. What the hell is going on here? Really, Beck, isn't it obvious? We're house hunting. I don't want to start married life in an apartment. Besides, when we have kids, we're going to need the space. I don't think she heard much past married life before she launched into my arms. I scraped the back of my head on the stone mantel and didn't care at all. Then she cried. Then she giggled. Then she got serious. Where's my ring? I haven't got it yet. I thought we'd pick it out together. The realtor came looking for us and heard the last. She laughed. What did I tell you, dear? Clueless. I swear, if we didn't guide them, the species would disappear. Are you up to looking at a few more houses? Up for it? She nearly dragged both of us out. I got to sit in the back while they talked location, school districts, shopping access. I stopped listening after 5 minutes. We looked at 4 more before we went back to our car. She wanted to look at that one once more. When we got to the living room, she looked at the mantel, smiled, and said, this one. It took a week to do the paperwork. Our business was booming. We had hired another associate, and Alan was training a new salesman. Alan and Cindy went a few times, but he was as overworked as I was, so he backed off. The economy was finally starting to turn around. I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. Beck had been at her job for a year and had gotten a small promotion and raise. We started talking about a family again. I talked Ida and her husband into representing the company at some of the events. It kept our name in focus and allowed Alan and I to work more. Ida had developed nicely, to the point that she was being stalked by competitors. We had a long talk about it. I told her she got a truly good offer, I wouldn't hold it against her if she took it. She assured me none had made an attractive enough offer to even consider moving. Yet, I laughed. I noticed she seemed a little down and seemed to be avoiding me unless it was absolutely necessary. I figured she had finally gotten that good offer. I called her in for a little chat. You haven't been yourself lately, Ida. If I've noticed, so has everyone else. Something you want to talk about? Ida was an attractive black woman. Tall, striking, usually smiling. If you got past her looks, you discovered she had a steel trap for a mind. She looked down, smoothing her dress, one of her stress signs. I thought a lot about what I'm about to tell you. My husband has been pushing me to talk to you, so here it is. It might not matter. You might already know. If not, please don't be angry with us. I figured this was it. She was giving me notice. She pulled out her tablet, fiddled with it for a bit, and handed it to me. A series of photographs. Of Becky and a man I didn't recognize. There were shots of them laughing, holding hands, kissing. One of them dancing, with his hands on her bum. He had her dress eased up until the bottoms of her cheeks were showing. One in a semi-dark room, and a fierce lip lock. These were taken over the last 3 events we've been to. I don't think she's realized who I am, or that I work for you. The last time she knew I was there, she spoke to me, and was extremely professional. Maybe you knew, but I didn't want to be the one to bring it to your attention if you didn't. Please don't fire me. I was in shock. This had to be some kind of gag. I'd go home and Becky would laugh. All our friends would jump out, and she'd say gotcha, and explain it all away. But I knew that it was exactly like it looked. I sat for a minute, before telling a nervous Ida her job was quite safe, and asked if she would transfer the images to my computer and burn me a hard copy. She stood. You didn't know, did you? I'm so sorry. If you need anything, ask. She came round and hugged me, the first physical contact we'd had in all the time we'd worked together. Again, I'm sorry. I am too, I said. Please don't say anything about this. She promised and fled the office, scared of the look on my face. Despite being an idea man, I was stumped. I did what I always did when I approached any problem. I did research. All I had now were pictures from an amateur. I wanted hard evidence. His name was Johnny Walker, and he hated scotch. I should have been named Jim or Jack. I'm a bourbon man through and through. He came highly recommended to me as one of the best in his business, so I hired him. It only took 2 weeks to get me everything I wanted. He met at a bar owned by one of his friends. There were rooms for private parties, and we used one of those. I didn't want to be seen going into his office, or him coming into mine. He agreed totally. I'd even bought a burner phone I kept locked in my desk to use to communicate with him. I know, it sounds paranoid. After all, if it was nothing, I didn't want Becky getting wind of the fact that I had her investigated. It would not lead to good things. It's all here, he said, giving me a small briefcase, pictures, video, interviews with friends and coworkers. Some of them didn't even know she was married. Apparently she doesn't wear her rings at work. They weren't particularly careful. I'm sorry. I handed him a check and picked up the case. He stopped me. You're not going to do anything stupid, are you? Scorched earth? Violence? You've been awful calm about this, and in my business calm is kind of scary. It's not worth going to jail for. Cut your losses and move on if you can't forgive her. I'm not going to hurt her, or him. Physically, at least. They both went into it with their eyes open. Surely they considered all that could happen if they got caught. I paused, thinking. I'm not going to hide money, make ridiculous demands, play games. And I'm not going to fight to keep her. I should never have to be in the position to have to fight for her. And by her actions, there's nothing to fight for. She broke the marriage of her own free will. I'm just going to walk away. Does that make me a wimp? No, it doesn't. It makes you a man of good judgment, someone calm and logical under pressure. A rarity in these situations. And they probably didn't consider the consequences at all. Few do. Got a lawyer. I shook my head. I thought I'd wait for the report. He wrote something on a notepad and handed it to me. I work a lot with these 3. They're all good. The first is a shark. He isn't happy until blood is spilled. The second is the guy you want if you want to stop a divorce. Not a good choice in your situation. The third guy is your man. He doesn't like drama, likes to keep things clean and calm as possible, while doing his best for your interests. If you don't have anyone lined up, give him a call. Mention me, and you get a discount. He walked to the door. Turning, he gave me a few more words of advice. If I were you, I wouldn't watch the DVD or look at the pictures. It won't help your case, and it will burn memories into you it will take years to erase. Same with the report. You already know all you need to know. However, read the contents of the red envelope. There's some pretty interesting information about your friends and their knowledge of her affair. And per your instructions, we won't turn the phone tap off for another 2 weeks. Again, I urge you not to listen to them. Call if you need anything else. I took the case to my office, extracted the red envelope, and locked the case, then locked it in the bottom of my file cabinet. I'd take his advice for right now. I did call the third man on the list and set up a consultation. Paul Whitfield ran a small, three-partner office. The offices were in an old building that still had the ornate moldings with high ceilings and dangling fans. Red folder. It made me very, very angry to know how many people I knew were aware of or helped cover for her affair. Their time would come, especially 4 of them. I played nice at work, kept up the farce at home for the rest of the week. She was feeling amorous Thursday, letting me warm her up for the weekend, I guess. By now she was just nothing to me. I didn't necessarily screw her, but it wasn't exactly loving either. She got off, I got off, then I got off her. You seemed a little distracted tonight, honey. Do I not do it for you anymore? She acted playful, but I sensed an undertone of fear in her words. You've always done it for me, Beck. I'm just tired and stressed. Let's get some sleep. I tried, but I just couldn't make myself cuddle, so I turned over and faked sleep. She snuggled to me, spooning. Love you, baby. I didn't answer, still pretending to be asleep. I think she could tell I was faking, but she didn't say anything. In the end, I just couldn't stand it, straying right into what Paul called stupid territory. I waited until almost an hour after the event was in progress before walking through the doors. I stood on the fringe of the crowd, watching. They held hands, snatched a little kiss now and then. The band started up, and I watched them sway across the floor. He was a better dancer than I'd ever be. Other than that, I didn't see it. He wasn't as tall as me, or as toned. No accounting for taste or lack thereof, as my great aunt was fond of saying. I was almost to them when I stopped dead. Cindy. She appeared right in front of them. They hugged, and they all laughed. I wonder if Alan knew she was here? I was like Moses parting the Red Sea. One look at my face, and people got out of the way. Becky must have noticed how the crowd was moving back. She turned, still holding his hand, and looked dead into my eyes. She froze for a few seconds, before trying to form words and let go of his hand. He grinned, the happy grin of a guy whose life is good, and held on. Friend of yours, Han? He said, finally letting go and holding out his hand. No, I snarled, husband. He paled and took 2 steps back. I looked at Beck. Aren't you going to introduce us? Jace, honey, it's not what it looks like. Give it up. It's exactly what it looks like. My wife keeping company with another man. How's that for putting it politely? I could have said the a-hole the bitch is screwing. The guy she's hanging the horns on me with. The scum-sucking bottom feeder who has no problem screwing a married woman. I was getting louder, and I drew myself in, breathing deeply. Her honey was trying to disappear into the crowd. Quite a few were listening. I called out to him, drawing even more attention. Where do you think you're going? You got the balls to bang her but not stand by her when shit hits the fan? Doesn't say much for you, does it? But don't worry, she's yours now. I got no more use for her. Becky was pulling my arm, begging me to calm down and we'd find a place to talk. I removed her hand, a little forcefully. I know, Beck. I know. Don't try to spin it. Don't insult me by trying to explain it. We're through. Completely. Understand? I left you a little something on the dining room table. It should bring back fond memories for you. I looked at Cindy, standing beside her and looking completely terrified. And you. Don't you ever speak to me again. Not in this lifetime. If we're in the same room, it would be better you stay as far away from me as possible or leave right away. No, wait. I do want to hear one thing. Did Alan know? She hung her head. That told me all I needed to know. Then tell him we're through as partners. He can buy me out, or I'll put my half up for sale. It hit the fan big time. She called. Alan called. Cindy called. Over and over. I didn't answer, erased the messages. I kept my car in my little garage with the door down. I was walking distance to a grocery store and a bar. Didn't like the bar, but the store was fine. I shocked the shit out of Alan by showing up at the office Monday. He started to talk, but I shut him down. I know you knew. Cindy as good as told me, being the true, loyal friend she is. I'll never forgive Cindy for helping her. And before you say it, she was helping her at the very least by keeping her secret. So tell your wife it would be in her best interest to stay away from the office and me. If she insists on being here, I won't. I'll let the business go down the drain and walk away, Alan. It would be very easy. This includes Becky, her lover, or any other of our so-called friends. Leave it alone. I had already called the police about restraining orders. They told me to talk to my lawyer. By 9, Becky and Cindy were pounding on my office door. I called Alan. If you want to stay in business, make them leave. Now, or I'll be the one leaving and I won't come back. I could hear a lot of the argument through the door. Becky was refusing to leave, and Cindy was supporting her. Alan was trying to make them understand. Please, girls, I'm begging here. This is his place of business as well as mine, and he has the right to conduct it as he sees fit. Like seat. One from Cindy, one from Beck. I knew Alan was watching as I dropped them on the ground and left. I hadn't got a block when I saw a familiar SUV behind me. I laughed into my helmet. Let the chase begin. I was on my Yamaha Roadstar, 102 inches of V-twin power. My one nod to success. It was 2 years old, a repo I'd gotten a really good deal on. Beck loved it, and we spent many an afternoon just tooling around, exploring. Keeping them close, I suddenly made a right turn on red. They were 2 cars behind and stuck. I whipped into a parking lot 3 blocks down, waited until I saw them zip by, and went back the way I'd come. They were probably still driving around in circles when I pulled into my garage. I carried the burner phone I'd gotten with me, and left my regular phone locked in my desk drawer. I still used it for business. I'd screen and delete everything but my customers and lawyer. Beck finally sent a registered letter, which I signed for, then sent back to her unopened. My lawyer did all my talking. She's a firecracker, he said, and sure knows a lot of colorful words. She was living in the house, and I was making half the payment, and directed Paul to tell her it would stop 6 months after we divorced, in which time I hoped to sell it or she could buy me out. I knew that would never happen. She simply couldn't afford it. She refused to get a lawyer. Paul shrugged. She isn't required to, but you can bet at the first hearing the judge will strongly suggest she get counsel. That will be the first attempt to drag it out as long as she can get to you. She's not going to let go. I saw it in her eyes. I'm all right with racking up the billable hours, but at some point you need to talk to her. Or, just say the hell with it and withdraw the petition. He saw the look on my face and held up his hands. I didn't say go back to her. Just do what you're doing now, and ignore her. It may take a while, but eventually she'll get tired and agree to the divorce. Let's give it until the actual hearing. Maybe she'll realize she's pissing in the wind and be reasonable. You really think so? I felt a faint ray of hope. Nope, he said grinning as he walked me out. She got her friends to intercede for her. That idea. Really, really bad idea. Word got out about my reactions and most of them understood it was a forbidden subject. Then her mom took up the banner. I'd always liked her, and I told her if she needed anything, help in any way, I'd be insulted if she didn't call me. But if she said her daughter's name one more time, I would never speak to her again. My mom became involved. I tried to make her see things as I did. Didn't even slow her down. I left and didn't return for 3 months. She stared right back into trying to get me to be reasonable. I left, and she called me 2 weeks later, crying, and promised to never bring her up again. I think she got it. Now she was going with the sad, I'll suffer in silence. But you know I'm right, look. Wasn't working for her. She did say she thought I needed to see someone. The anger is changing you, honey. Not for the best. You need to get your balance back for your own well-being. I thought about that for a while. I tried to compartmentalize, keep it separate from the rest of my life. Never could get it to work. It was the worst when I saw Cindy. She still came occasionally by the office. She knew better to say anything. She could see in my eyes what I thought of her. She and Alan were not doing well. They were stressed, trying to figure out a way to save the business. Alan tried to talk about it once. I actually listened, calm enough now to be curious as to what they could possibly say that would justify their cheating. Please, Jace, I'm begging you here. If you pull out, we both know I'll be out of business in 6 months. I've worked as hard as you to make this a success. I'll lose everything. The house, the cars. I have children, remember? I need to provide them with the best quality of life possible. Instead of calming me, it just made me angrier. Really? You're using the kids as a bargaining chip? Tell me something. Did you even remotely consider how I might react, knowing my best friends in the whole world were helping the love of my life screw me over? You might should have considered the ramifications before you got involved. Maybe if you'd remembered the last time she did something like this and my reaction then, when we weren't married or even seriously committed, you would have spoken up. Were you thinking about the kids while you were lying to me? He flushed and looked really, really angry. God damn it. It's time for you to get over yourself and think about the harm you're doing here because your feelings are hurt. Do I need to kick your bum to get you to understand? Wrong thing to say. You wanted to protect me? Then why didn't you read Cindy the Riot Act? Tell Beck she was making a serious mistake. Threatened to tell me unless she stopped. I think you weren't worried about me at all, but were more worried about the business. This cash cow has moved her last, Alan. You're good at what you do. You'll find a job pretty easily, especially now that the economy is rebounding. You may not have the quality of life you have now, but you'll survive. Cindy could actually get a job for a while to help. It might give her the shot of reality she needs. And as far as kicking my bum, you don't have any idea how part of me wants you to really try. My mom says I need to release some of my rage. Pounding the dog shit out of you might go a long way towards doing that. Now, if you're done, get the hell out of my office. Go work on your resume or something. Like I said, Alan is 6'4". I just barely made it to 6. And he outweighed me by 60 pounds. But the thing he didn't have was rage. He grabbed me, spun me around, opening his mouth to say more. I didn't give him a chance, swinging instantly. I gave it everything I had, putting all the pain and rage I had into one punch. It landed right between the eyes. He went down like an imploded building. I stood over him, rubbing my knuckles. I believe we're done here. Let yourself out, and don't ever come back into this office unless I ask you to. The door had been open, and Ben, our new salesman, was standing there with an open mouth. I think I'll work from home the rest of the day. Help him up, will you? It was 2 days before I went back. He'd been treated for a concussion, and he looked like a raccoon with 2 black eyes. From the div. She'll see it as a chance to finally state her case and get you back. I'm warning you now, though, it could be pretty painful. I told her to set it up. I've been in pain since I found out. I'm pretty sure a little more won't kill me. The sad part was I knew she still really loved me. I knew, because I listened into her phone conversations for the next few weeks before I allowed Johnny to remove the taps. The first days after we split were mostly her calling me. The messages I didn't listen to on my phone I got to hear anyway. Most were tearful entreaties for me to talk to her, to let her explain. After about the first 50 it was down to one sentence. Please talk to me, Jace, please. The conversations with her friends were pretty interesting, especially Cindy. God, we really screwed up, didn't we? Yes, we did. I don't know what I was thinking, Cindy. Why did I do it? She actually giggled. You did it because it was fun. You're a classic cake eater, honey, thinking you could have them both and he'd never find out. I never thought he'd find out either. I'm sorry Alan found out, but I knew he'd never tell. He needed Jace too badly. Hell, we all need him. You know he's trying to get out of the partnership, don't you? Says if we do it in our private life, wonder what he was up to in the business? We've got to get to him, get him back on board. We've got to fix this, Beck. The question is how. I see a long period of bum kissing in our future. Becky was sobbing quietly. I don't think there's enough bum kissing in the world to fix this one. Cindy. He's really pissed. He left me a folder, pictures, interviews. You'd be amazed how eager some were to throw me under the bus. I can't believe how arrogant we were. Some of her friends were no better. Most talked to her about strategies to get me in the same room with her right up to, and including kidnapping. Most promised to talk to me. Their reports afterwards were entertaining. One woman chewed her out pretty bad. I'm done. He almost took our heads off, and the sad thing is we deserved it. He asked my husband if I was all right with you having an affair and actually helping you cover it and give alibis. What was I doing when he wasn't around? I'm still kissing. Jack is really pissed. I'm pretty sure you're toast, Beck. I know we are. I wouldn't ask any more of us to talk to him. Sorry, hon. The a-hole actually called her 3 times. She hung up on him the first time, but the next 2, right before I turned the taps off, were enlightening. Don't hang up, Becky. We're in serious trouble here. We need to talk. Our jobs are in the balance. You think I give a damn about the job, Greg? The worst thing I ever did in my life was go to work for you. I could hear the irritation in his voice. Come off the high horse, girl. You practically begged for this job. And it might have been my idea to fool around, but you didn't hesitate once the subject came up. Speaking of that, want to get together? He's not coming back, and you know it. The look in his eyes that night scared the hell out of me. We could console each other. He'd never know. She exploded. That's what we thought the first time, remember? How'd that work out? And if he's that pissed now, what do you think he'd do if he found out? No means no, Greg. Never again. Calm down. It was just a thought. I have to go in front of the board of directors next week. Word of our little escapade has gotten back to them. You'll probably get a call too. We need to decide how to spin this. She actually laughed. Spin this? If they asked, I'm going to tell them the truth. We had an affair. We both share the blame. I will tell them that it's over, and I'll never do it again if they let me stay. I doubt they will. He tried one more time. They'll fire me, Becky, whether they do you or not. This type of work is all I've ever done. If I get let go and word gets out why, I'll probably never work in this business again. She softened a bit. I'm not throwing you under the bus here. It was both our fault. But I have to tell the truth. If I don't and Jace finds out, I really will be toast. I'm actually fond of you, Greg, but you're not worth my marriage. Well, she seemed sincere. I called their direct boss and arranged a meeting. He showed, with his lawyer, scared to death I was going to sue them. That kind of publicity in this economy would seriously compromise their fundraising abilities. And I knew they had a very strict moral code, an absolute necessity for their company. They could lose contracts, and it would be very hard to attract new charities. Up until now, they'd had a really good record. I played the tap for them. Before you talk, I need to tell you this tape was legally obtained. If push comes to shove, I'll make it public record in my divorce. I let them sweat before I gave them my proposal. I'll forego legal recourse for certain considerations. First, my wife is never to know of this meeting. Second, reprimand her, demote her, do whatever you want except fire her. I need her to have a job during the divorce. Do what you want with the a-hole, but in my opinion, this doesn't seem like the first time to me. What if it had been a major donor or the wife or daughter of one? In my opinion, he's a disaster waiting to happen. There again, an opinion, do what you want. Agreed? Good. Of course, we can't write this up, but I've taped this conversation. Here. I pulled out the recorder and gave them the tape. I neglected to mention the other recorder's still going. Now, if I make trouble for you, you can play the tape. And one more thing. You have a volunteer, Cindy Waller. She helped my wife conduct her affair and covered for her. It might be good if she wasn't associated with you any longer. They looked like bobbleheads, shaking up and down in agreement. She did get demoted and put on probation, but she kept her job. Cindy was pissed when they told her it might be best if she volunteered for another organization, but she understood. I feel like Jace was behind it. She whined to Becky. What if he was? So what? I bet Alan would agree if he would admit it. You're judged by the company you keep, Cindy. And right now I'm toxic. They allowed Greg to resign, and he didn't get a letter of recommendation. I have no idea where he ended up, but he gave Becky a goodbye call. They canned me. Oh, it was polite, but I'm gone, with no recommendation. I guess this is goodbye. She seemed sympathetic. I'm sorry, Greg, but we brought it on ourselves. At least you're not married. There was silence for a second. Actually, Beck, I am. She's in service, in a not-so-nice place right now. She rotates home in 3 months. You a-hole. How could you do that to her? At least Jace is home, out of danger. I agree. I'm an a-hole. But I was lonely, horny, and you were agreeable. I'm sorry about all this. You're not going to tell her, are you? No. I have no way of contacting her, but even if I did, she doesn't deserve what I'm going through. Love her hard when she gets back, and don't ever repeat this mistake. I promise. I'm so sorry how it all turned out. I hope you get him back. You're a hell of a woman, Becky. Goodbye. She cried into the phone for several seconds before hanging up. I thought about trying to contact his wife, but in the end I didn't. She probably needed to know, but if he ran true to type she'd find out soon enough. Kathy got in contact with Becky, and she jumped all over the chance to talk to me. At her suggestion, she went to 3 sessions alone first. I think Kathy was trying to prepare her, but she was too stubborn to see it. The big night finally came. The first session. I figured she would try to ambush me, so I made it a point to be there 30 minutes early. Becky was really surprised when Kathy collected her from the waiting room and found me already there. Jace, she cried, trying to hug me. Kathy imposed herself between us. Becky, for this to work, you have to give him his space. He's already made it clear he doesn't want any physical contact. If you don't follow the rules I've laid out, he'll leave, and he won't come back. Understand? It took her a few minutes, but she gathered herself and sat down at the table. Becky, listen to me. I know you have things you want to say, and so does Jace. Remember, be calm, be clear, and avoid dramatics. Would you like to go first? She nodded, and we waited. First, I need to apologize, Jace. I know what I did was wrong. You have every right to be angry. I have no excuse. I'm not even sure now why I did it. Was it worth the pain I've been going through? No way in hell. Would I ever be that stupid again? Not for anything. But Kathy has explained to me that being sorry and apologizing won't change a thing if you can't forgive me. I know I screwed up and destroyed a good marriage. What I need to do now is convince you to give me another chance. Will you promise to talk to me? If after we finish these sessions and still can't forgive me, I'll walk away and not fight the divorce. I looked between her and Kathy. I could see her hand in this. Maybe those individual sessions had helped after all. I spoke. She was obviously waiting for me to say something. I know that speech took a lot out of you, Beck. I was thinking about it for the last few days. We've known 5 couples over the years who've split up over cheating that have gone to counseling to try to save their marriage. How many made it? I checked. 1. Gary and Sherry. And they don't cuddle in public. The little touches they used to give each other all the time, gone. It's been 2 years, and they're still not back yet. Could you live like that? Knowing I'd always suspect you if you were gone, even for an hour or 2. If I automatically tried to verify everything you told me, snooped in your purse, checked your computer and cell phone on a regular basis, I couldn't. She was flinching at my words like each was a physical blow, but kept a determined look on her face. If I got to cuddle with you every night in bed, I could. I'd do anything and everything I could to reassure you, to show you I've changed, and you could trust me again. I threw up my hands. There it is, another of the magic words, trust. Exactly how would you get me to trust you again? You went out when we were dating, lying about it when we hadn't even made a commitment yet. I should have seen it then. Now, years later, after being together for all this time, planning a family, a future, you do it again. Were you lonely this time too? Bored because I was out trying to build a business and a better future for us, and didn't have time to go to dance clubs or out on the town. I was finally letting go of some of the poison, and it felt good. Becky was looking horrified. Kathy stepped in. Our time is up. I want you to do some homework for me before our next meeting. Becky, I want you to think about what Jace said. Tell him in detail how you plan to get him to trust you. Jace, I need you to think about it too. Do you think you can get over your rage and try to rebuild a relationship with Beck? Talk another 30 minutes before I held up my hand, rising. It's over, Beck. Accept it and move on. Understand I still love you, but it isn't enough anymore. The divorce is final in 4 weeks. It's best for both of us. You're still a young, beautiful woman. You'll find someone else. When you do, if you ever get tempted, think of us. He will deserve your best. I walked out, my heart breaking all over again as I heard her wail. Kathy called me 2 days later. I just finished a session with Becky. You know I can't tell you what we talked about, but she still thinks she can win you back. Watch for her. I know she'll be around, and I'm worried. I'm really sorry it ended this way. I think you should continue seeing me for a while. Shall we make an appointment? I thought about it. Not right now. I'll call you in a month or so. Thanks for everything, Kathy. Kathy was right. She had one last hurrah before she gave up. I loved all of her family except her oldest brother. He was a cop, a shift commander. He was also arrogant and a bully. We tolerated each other, he'd taken to pulling me over regularly, just to mess with me and demand I forgive his sister. I talked to Paul, he had me log the next 4 stops, and the good commander found himself explaining his interest in me to the assistant chief. The stops halted, and it didn't make him like me more. It was 2 weeks before the final hearing. The sun was shining, spring was in the air, and I was feeling happy for the first time in a long while. The Yamaha was humming right along that Saturday morning when the lights came on behind me. I pulled over. I was getting my license out, not looking at him, when he tasered me, put me in cuffs, and threw me in the back of his car. I had just come around when he stopped at a nearby park, hauled me out while I ranted, and handcuffed me to a bench. Then he took the original cuffs off and used them to hook Becky to me. You'll listen now. I'll be back in 45 minutes, and I better see smiling faces. Becky babbled while I tried to clear my head, apologizing for what was happening. Can we talk now, baby? I looked at her trying to find the woman I'd married in her eyes. She wasn't there. Like I have a choice, I said, smiling. Just hand me my phone.